Hello, good afternoon. Uh, of late, I've been touching on topics in my sharing that I thought would be kind of universally, I was hoping at least, that was my ambitious targeting, was that some practical tips that might be helpful to a wider audience. Those of you, not ignoring those of you that are farther into your studies, but not neglecting, purposely not neglecting those of you that are just contemplating or just taking those first few steps or have been in it for a while and it reached impasses. And I've talked about personal things that you could do that are within your accessibility, within your purview, within your uh, abilities, no matter where you are in the hierarchy of things. But And that was because I was very much focused on practical things. I spent a lot of time recently really experiencing that old cliche that uh, I said Eckhart Tolle, but I think it's Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle, be here now. And I appreciate his work, but that be here now, it's kind of like, it reminds me of the Nike commercial, just do it. It's kind of become overused to the point of being cliche-ish. And I spent some time personally experimenting and delving into and experiencing on very deep levels what it meant to be in the moment. And then, of course, I had some fun with what is a moment. Can we stretch it? A moment, or a moment. And that's just for fun. But I just wanted to push the parameters. How far? How long? How do you measure a moment? Is it a tick of the clock? A second? Is it a beat of the heart? Is it a breath? Probably all of the above. And many of you would say, well, gee, who cares? And I probably could ditto that. I probably could agree most of the time, but I want to do, that's my mind, that's how my mind wants to work and wants to really delve into. So, as most things, as we make progress, when I started transcending this cliche-ish, be in the moment, be here now, when I try to transcend the baggage that has surrounded this overuse, much like enlightenment, which I don't even like to use, other than to say, yes, in the light, in its truest sense. But I think awakening is it'll probably get overused to the point of being practically useless too. And who knows where I'll go from there, or where we'll go from there. But awakenings, awareness, and like most, I want to say the word advance in my studies, like most, enhance is better. Like most enhancement of my discipline and my study and living life, an enhancement, something that makes it greater than it previously was experiential. And I started noticing that more and more of me was able to be totally absorbed, whatever was at hand in the moment, whatever was in hand. And I discussed about learning at this late stage in my life, learning to cook. I cook for myself. I cook for my wife when she's not staying in Taipei. And this is a new interest in my life because previously I didn't seem to even be able to boil an egg. And now I don't claim to be any great culinary skills by a long shot, but I'm getting good at what I do do. What I do do. What I do do. Yeah, I'm getting good at what I do do. Indeed. And a lot of it has to be with being absorbed in the moment to the exclusion of everything else. And this is a kind of textbook definition of my understanding of being in the moment. Be so committed, be so involved to the point of exclusion of everything else. And it's quite liberating. It makes a task become closer to a joy. A joy in the sense of enjoyment. I'm in joy in the moment. Enjoyment. 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 Sorry, I play with words. That's something else I like to do. But that's when I noticed is, hey, could this be it? You know, I have these conundrums, these puzzles, these reoccurring questions of long standing. And recently I dealt it through 4 or 5 of my sharings in the last couple of weeks, a couple of months maybe, about finally understanding that clarity simply meant, for me, clarity simply meant understanding, living my purpose. And my purpose is so simple. My purpose is unity. My purpose is merging. My purpose is disappearing into the mystic, into the collective self, the collective consciousness. And then sharing whatever dawns on me that may be of further interest or of any usefulness to anybody else. And I love to say, because this brings it back to the basics, and this brings it back to the universality, and this brings it back to the oneness and the sharing and the commonality of awareness. We're all aware, as I said before, we're all Buddhas. And Buddhas in different stages of remembering the forgotten, remembering what we've always known, but coming to this life with sort of a blessing of this knowing being lifted from us. And we almost have to go on a quest to rediscover, the quest of rediscovering what we've forgotten. And what we've forgotten, of course, is so simple. What we've forgotten, what we've let duality, quite frankly, interfere with, or simply just being in the state that we have always been in, but even more so, that we've been always intended to be in. And reaching this state, reaching this awareness, reaching the resolution, dealing with the paradoxes of duality. And what I always use, what I really like, is predetermined. Yes, 100%. Our lives are predetermined. Free will, yes, we have 100% free will. Now, it's being able to reconcile the entertainment of these two seemingly polar opposites, to wrap our head around it, to not implode or explode, and to totally grasp that opposites are indeed part of a wholeness, the unity, the non-duality, the reality of the non-dual world. Two extremes that we mistakenly take as opposite and help support the dualistic vision or view of the world. And whose purpose does this dualism serve? Me and you. It serves the ego. And as we penetrate, as we first start to get inklings of recognition of the egoic state in its artificiality, that indeed it's a state that we've created, is totally maya, totally illusion. The illusory nature of egoism, of the egoic state. First it's an inkling, then it's a recognition, and then it's a discarding and ultimate disposal of ego or egoism. And that reconciling of free will, yes, predetermined destiny, yes, 100%, yes, 100%, and I'm okay. In fact, I'm better than okay, because this is for me, in my experience, this was the cosmic joke. When I finally understood the state of mind, the state of consciousness you have to be into to recognize the falsity of duality. When you recognize that both are equally so, and furthermore, they're one and the same. Night is day, up is down. And it gets really confusing until you start looking at, for me, it was spherical. First it was two-dimensional, flat circle with degrees, okay? Opposites are 90 degrees apart, but then spherical. Three-dimensional, which once you start learning how to think into three-dimensional, because we learned on paper and pencil and flat surfaces and two-dimensional, that's our training, that's our background. But once we get to the third dimension, and that started for me really when I was studying geometry of all things. Geometry was the only math that I was ever accomplished in. I really got geometry. I really liked it, and even though I learned it on two-dimensionally, it led for me to start thinking in, as strange as that might seem, because learning was always, to me, previously been a two-dimensional process, a book. Even the dimension of a teacher, it's only two. And then I started adding from the teacher to me to back to me, and then started seeing the holistic sense that learning was occurring three-dimensional. And once you get to three, it's really easy to add others. Fourth dimension. And then you start talking about the sixth sense, because we have five senses: sight, hearing, touch. Sight, hearing, touch. I know we got five senses. A smell and hearing. Hearing, smell, touch. Well, like I'm a little short with my five senses. Let's see. Touch, hearing, smelling, seeing, and tasting? Anyway, I went straight to the six. Maybe I skipped the five. I wasn't really sure about the five, but I went straight to the sixth sense and started developing the sixth sense, started a real interest in. But this all went back to expanding from two-dimensional learning to three-dimensional learning to including the fourth dimension. And later on, before I finish this video, I'll rattle off the five senses so that you won't think I'm totally touch, hearing, sight. Touch, hearing, sight. Didn't do any better. Should I scrap this? And I just... Let me go back to my caveat. Apparently, I don't need to know this right now, because when I need to know, I will know. And what could be more basic than the five senses? Not much. But I always jump. I jumped into the sixth sense. And this kind of progressive that you can only learn with 2020 hindsight when you stop and begin considering these things, because so much was in the realm of taken for granted. It's a given. This was our reality. It's only when you question the substance, when you question reality, that you begin to start, at least for me, to dissect and go back and look at how you got to where you are. And recently I talked about lucid dreams. And just before I talked about lucid dreams, I talked about lucid surrender. And I talked about lucid just means illuminated. Light it up. Like I'm trying to get my light working better in my little room here. Still, I haven't spent money because I don't have much, but I do the best with what I can. And this result, the lighting that I'm showing today, is where I am today. First, I had to deal with sound. But anyway, I digress, don't I? So I talked about lucid surrender, which surrender is a continuous surrendering, and translucent, transparent, active, even proactive participation in a daily ritual of surrendering to the unknown, surrendering to the known, surrendering to the yet to be known, surrendering to the expansion that the unknown undoubtedly, as you delve deeper into something, don't you notice that there's more left unknown? That's the nature of searching. The more you search, the more there is to find. So I talked about lucid surrender. Lucid in the sense of an active participant, much as lucid dreams. When a lucid dream is when you're dreaming and you can have some control over your dream. You can change your dream. You can be an actor within your dream. And your dream can play out the way you want it to, so that you become a conscious participant in your dreaming state. And then I separated dreaming state to the two realms. The two realms. There's one's lucid dreaming, and then, of course, the opposite, the other part of lucid dreaming. Before you can lucid dream, you have to be familiar with your dreaming process, and that means keeping a journal, remembering your dreams. Paying attention to your dreams is probably the most critical. And then, at least for me, the lucid part gradually came into play, where I said, hey, wait a minute. I'm not just a witness. I'm always a participant. So I'm a participant in my waking state, hopefully. And then I learned to be a participant in my unawakened, in my sleeping state. That was lucid dreaming. And I talked about the other kind of dreaming, which ties into where I am today, where it was a dreaming, it was a esoteric kind of a dreaming. This is where the light body comes in. This is where the soul work, going to dimensions that you weren't even aware it existed. I always saw it in the solar system that expanded, and I would go to planets in some other solar system, probably in some other galaxy or some other universe, definitely in some other universe, and participate either in learning, sometimes seldom, but sometimes in a teaching capacity. My higher self had work to share with others. But overwhelmingly, these journeys were for self-illumination. They were learning, because it came to me that our soul work is not just done within this body, but our soul work is involved in inclusive of realms unknown. And today I wanted to talk about realms beyond. This is what I'm mentioning. Realms beyond the beyond. And if you're fortunate and have a solid meditation practice, you can start to participate in these adventures while not sleeping. Usually they occur, at least for me, they more commonly occur when I'm sleeping, because I'm not burdened with the body. The body was just laid down to rest, left in good hands, left in automatic survival. What needed to happen to my body when I'm sleeping happens, doesn't it? Or if it doesn't happen, we just don't wake up. It's that simple. And I think, as far as dying goes, most of us would probably prefer just simply going to sleep and not waking up, or not waking up until it's time to either choose a new incarnation, choose a destination, choose a planet, choose a form, choose whatever, because we're not only reincarnated in on this planet. I've come to understand that I spent almost 500 years, from the 1300s to the 1800s, not on this plane. I have vague memories of being somewhere else, but I do know that there was a huge gap of at least 500 years. And how do I know that? Well, I intuited it. I experienced it. Like I said, it came to me. The other day, this precise mathematical formula came to mind. Right? In the realms of mathematical formulas, I admit mine is quite simple. But in my experience, because I don't experience things mathematically, other than that elusive, illuminating time with geometry when basically I change from a two-dimensional to a three, to a third and beyond dimensional thinker, being. But this experience of intuitive, just knowing, I'm talking about this mathematical formula, 1/100th of 1/10 of a percent of the 7 billion and change souls on this planet have awakened. And I did the math several times. Now I came up with 70,000. Maybe some of you could fact check me. I'll start again. 1/100th of 0.1% of the total world population. And I rounded to 7 billion. And I came up with 70,000. And every time I tried it at first, it was a little bit different. So I'm not a mathematical genius, but what was amazing, by any stretch of the imagination, what was amazing to me is that it just dawned on me. It just came to me. And that's very rare, that this kind of precision. First of all, what does it matter? But my point, it mattered to me to understand that this is awakening to your Buddhahood, residing and abiding permanent awakeness is not that rare. There's 70,000 others alive and kicking as we speak to each other. As I speak, and maybe you listen, I don't know. But now, this intuition I spoke of, 500 years of in another realm, in another dimension, in another whatever, for 500 years. And if you look at reincarnation as, if you look at each life as an opportunity and a preparation for further advancement till you get to the point where you can choose if you want to come back to this realm, if you want to come back to earth. And usually people who choose this, they've become awakened, they've realized, they've awakened to their Buddhahood, and they have an opportunity to either keep going, because trust me, there's a lot more beyond this experience. There's a lot more realms. Progression is a continuous. And then you choose to come back for a purpose. So then first you experience your last lifetime, which this is mine, and I waited till past 60 to have this experience. And with the understanding, first of all, there's the certainty of this process. Is if you have a question whether you're awakened or not, and I speaking from experience, you're not. I wasn't. I thought perhaps I might, but I still had a question. I looked for validation. I ran to my teacher and said, hey, da 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 da. And even though, because I was surrounded by other people, even though he didn't, he said to the people around me, he wasn't talking to me, he said to the people, no, you haven't. But to me, he did, when no one was looking, he did this. And it was the beginning of the crystallization or the cementing of the sureness, that indeed it was my turn. Your turn has either come or will come. So just to be flexible, just to exercise. Your spiritual exercise is to think about realms beyond. This is what I'm suggesting that we can all do. We all experience different realms in our different phase of sleep. Our soul work, our light body, our etherical work, our spiritual work, when we're not constricted with the confines of our physical form, when we transcended our mundane life. We transcend it. We go to these realms of beyond. And I love to think in terms of bigness, infinity, universe, beyond universe, beyond universe, galaxies, billions of galaxies, billions of universes, billions of dimensions. Why not? If we're going to play these games, for that matter, why not? Billions. Carl Sagan, billions and billions. That's the pretty poor Carl Sagan, but I used to love that. Billions and billions. Talking about the possibilities, the surety he had that other life existed. Well, I'm sure other realms exist. And I'm suggesting to you, as part of your training, and if you're inclined, start paying attention to your stages of sleep, your stages of dreams, and find your